And good morning to you too. Good morning to you too.
Hey, I'm very familiar with your work. It's really an honor to
to all our guests.
Good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning, Justice Deepak sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Sir, this is Nishan Bansal. And
yes,
good morning, Dr. Mohan.
Good morning.
So,
Yeah, good morning,
with your
Professor.
permission, sir.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Manu,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Very warm. Yes, definitely, and a very warm wishes to one and all on the behalf of Geeta Institute of Law. I, Manvi Kundu, would like to welcome you all for the inaugural session of our international e-seminar. So as we all know that day we have all joined for the e-seminar on the topic protection of human rights in the era of globalization, contemporary issues and challenges. So let me start with a brief introduction of the college. Geeta Institute of Law has a unique distinction as one of the prestigious law institute in Delhi NCR in India. And the institute was guaranteed affiliation by the Kurukshetra University in 2007, and it is also approved by the Bar Council of India. And the mission of Geeta Institute of Law is to achieve excellence with a well-rounded legal education. And our curriculum is also designed in a way to develop well-prepared graduates capable of interacting knowledge of legal theory, practical skills, and professional values. So we are dedicated to advance human dignity, social welfare, and justice through the knowledge of law. So now I'm pleased to be a part of this international e-seminar as the topic is really dynamic, and to walk you all through the seminar and introduce you to the delegate who are present with us to share their knowledge and enhance our mental horizon. So the presence of the Chief Justice of today's international seminar, Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India, is highly delighted. We welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Justice Mohan Maitri Paris, former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka and a permanent representative of Sri Lanka at UNO, for giving his valuable time to us. Thank you, sir. And we also welcome our guest of honor, Professor.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Morning. It is a great pleasure for me to friends from all over the world who came here to exchange knowledge on protection of human rights in globalization, contemporary issues and challenges. I first wish to extend to you the greetings of the Geeta Group of Institutions. First of all, I am very much pleased to welcome Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra ji, who is former Chief Justice of India, as our chief guest. He is very kind enough to us that he has given us permission to conduct national moot court competition in his name. Justice Deepak Mishra moot court competition to Geeta Institute of Law. I am highly obliged, sir, that your thoughts will be spread not only in India, but throughout the world. We will spread your ideology and your methodology. I am very thankful to you, sir, that you have spared your valuable time today as a chief guest. And secondly, our guest of honor, Honorable Mr. Justice Mohan Maitri Pires, Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, who has been the permanent member of UNO of Sri Lanka. I welcome and honor him for sparing his valuable time. And Professor Dr. Heather Catherine, who is the distinguished professor at Bioforce University, for their presence. I welcome all other dignitaries. It is high time that such an event took place to highlight the issues and challenges faced by human race with their human rights in the era of globalization. The online globalization has posed a number of questions at the concept of welfare state, which is considered to be the one to preserve, protect, and promote these basic human rights of its people. Therefore, it is the utmost importance to revisit the idea of welfare state via protection of human rights through this intended e-seminar. Before closing, I have to extend further thanks to the Center for Environmental Studies, Geeta Institute of Law, who has greatly helped the conference. Let me now close by wishing a delightful and stimulating. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Next, we have with us our guest of honor, Honorable Mr. Justice Mohan Mehri Peris, former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka. Honorable Peter Mohan Mehri Peris has received his primary and secondary education at St. Joseph College and Royal College, Colombo, and admitted as an attorney at law of the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka in June 1975 and a solicitor of the Supreme Court of England and Wales in 1978. He has also appeared as a counsel with the Attorney General in the Special Presidential Commission of Inquiry into Corruption and Abuse of Power in Public Bodies, and laterly he was attached to the Civil Section of the Attorney General Department, during which he has represented the state in the appellate courts in matters concerning constitutional laws, judicial reviews, and administrative law. And even he was also actively engaged in matters of arbitration in Sri Lanka, inclusive of international commercial arbitration at Maxwell Chamber, Singapore, where he was appeared as a senior counsel in 2 international arbitrations conducted under rules of London Centre for International Arbitration and the International Centre for Settlement of Investment Dispute. He was also restored silk and appointed President's Counsel in 2004. And during his tenure as a Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, he has gave various landmark judgments in the field of law, and he was even also engaged as a academic as a law teacher in the following positions, which were he was also a visiting lecturer in National University of Judicial Science, Kolkata, and visiting a lecturer in National Law Universities of Bhopal, Ranchi, Assam, and Gujarat. And even he is also a visiting lecturer to the Symbiosis Law School, Goenka Universities in India. And during his tenure, he was also undertaken in extensive judicial reforms while training the judicial officers in Sri Lanka and abroad. And he also played an active role in crafting legal education policy as an Attorney General and Chief Justice. And he undertook extensive reform as a chairman of the Council of Legal Education by introducing curriculum reforms and reforms in examination procedure, reform in courts procedure by the use of information technology with a view to enhance the standards required to meet the contemporary challenge by the legal challenges. So I'm pleased to have you, sir, with us. So I request you, sir, to please share your vision and knowledge with us in regards to the human right. Please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. A very good morning to each one of you. And thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, which perhaps was quite not necessary, but being so gracious, I'm thankful that you were so gracious in narrating my entire career virtually. But be that as it may, first of all, let me just do some greetings. I must thank Professor Watts, first of all, for inviting me to participate in this conference. And of course, Chairman Mr. Bansal for arranging such an important conference on the protection of human rights in the era of globalization and its contemporary issues and challenges. My dear friends, members of the board, members of the faculty, academia, and my colleagues on the panel of speakers today, Chief Justice Mishra, for whom we have great respect and has been a great friend of mine. And then we have Professor Catherine Allensdottir from the Faculty of Law and Social Sciences in Frost University in Iceland, with us here this evening. And of course, we have the principal of the Geeta Institute, Dr. Subhash Mithal. Thank you for inviting me. Let me, without further ado, deal with this very important topic of human rights in an era of globalization, more particularly coming from this part of the world where I'm situated, where we are embroiled in human rights on a day-to-day basis, because it is becoming a pretty delicate commodity, if I was to use that expression, and a difficult commodity to deal with. My dear friends and my dear students, perhaps, who are listening to these lectures, you will agree with me that it is apparent that some of the most widely accepted and central tenets of human rights was universality, inalienability, and its indivisibility. That they emerge, and human rights therefore emerges as highly contentious upon a close inspection of those ingredients of universality, inalienability, and indivisibility. We can talk about it for perhaps months, quite frankly. But let me say a few words in the context of globalization on human rights and governance. You might know the name or the person Daniel Webster. Daniel Webster was a great jurist, a great lawyer in the United States, and a congressman who said this, quote, he said, "Justice, sir, is the greatest interest of man on earth. It is the ligament which holds civilized beings and nations together. It is the end of civil society. Justice is truth in action and make the legal system in each country viable as an instrument of national fulfillment." I must follow that up with perhaps a quotation from Justinian, from the Institutes of Justinian. And this is what Justinian said, and you can probably look up the text. He said, "Justice is the earnest and constant will to render to every man his due. The precepts of the law are these." And what are those precepts? To live honorably, to injure no other man, and to render to every man his due. My dear students, you will see that all this perhaps is wrapped up in the concept of good governance. And good governance, you will appreciate, is the process by which public institutions conduct public affairs, manage public resources, and guarantee the realization, most importantly, of human rights. If there is no governance, there cannot be, in the absence of good governance, we can never have human rights. In the absence of a democracy, we can never have human rights. If you have no respect for the rule of law, you can never have human rights. If there is no responsible government, you can never have human rights. So good governance, my dear students, accomplishes this in a manner essentially free of abuse and corruption, and with due regard to the rule of law. You might ask me, well, what is good governance in the context of human rights? The true test of good governance is the degree to which it delivers on the promise of human rights. If a government fails to promise on human rights, there is no good governance. It is as simple as that. Civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights. They have to deliver on those fronts. So the key question is, are the institutions of governance effectively guaranteeing the rights to, for example, health, rights to adequate housing, rights to sufficient food, rights to quality education, rights to fair justice and personal security? As you probably know, many commissions of UN commissions on human rights concerning governance has emphasized the following thing that I'm going to say. It recognizes the need for a closer examination of the role of good governance for the promotion of human rights and the relationship between good governance practices and the promotion and protection of all human rights in our countries. And how do we do it? We look for, it says, human rights, if there is good governance and human rights, that recognizes that transparent, responsible, accountable, and participatory government, responsive to the needs and aspirations of our people. He says, is the foundation on which good governance rests, and that such a foundation is a sine qua non. There's no argument about it. A sine qua non, an indispensable must, for the promotion of human rights. That's the first thing. Secondly, it emphasizes in this context the need to promote partnership approaches to international development, cooperation, and to ensure the prescriptive approaches to good governance, right, which do not impede such cooperation. And thirdly, it requests the United Nations, most of these commissions, you will see, request the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to invite all states to provide practical examples of activities that have been effective in strengthening good governance practices. Now, my dear students, in this short space of time, let me tell you that commissions also requested the High Commissioner at my end of the United Nations to invite states to provide practical examples of activities that have been effective in promoting good governance, including through development cooperation. Now, you will recall that societies have located the beginnings, if you look for the sources of human rights, and Justice Mishra probably will tell you all about it, that the sources located beginnings of the human rights, you will find it invariably in our religious documents. The Vedas, the Bible, the Quran, the Analects of Confucius are some of the oldest written sources which address questions of people's duties, rights, and responsibilities.
Yes.
Several theoretical approaches have been advanced to explain how human rights become part of social expectations. The biological theory, natural law theories, and interest theories defend the theories which are defenses of human. Ultimately, the term human rights, you will appreciate, is often itself an appeal to a transcendent principle, not based on existing legal concepts. The term humanism, you will see, refers to the developing doctrine of such universal, applicable values. So the term human rights today, you will all agree, has replaced the term natural rights in popularity because rights are less and less frequently seen as natural law for their existence. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, in this world of globalization, fundamental human rights are violated when, amongst other things, examples, a certain race, creed, or group is denied recognition as a person, Article 2 and Article 6 of the Universal Declaration. Where where men and women are not treated as equals, Article 2. Where different racial or religious groups are not treated as equal, again, Article 2. Life, liberty, or security of persons are threatened in terms of Article 3. A person is sold as or used as a slave, as tabooed by Article 4. Cruel, inhuman, or degrading punishment is used on a person, such as torture or execution, as they contemplated in Article 5. Victims of abuse are denied an effective judicial remedy, as contemplated in Article 8. Punishments are dealt with arbitrarily or unilaterally without a proper and fair trial, in Article 11. Arbitrary interference in personal or private lives by agents of the state, again tabooed by Article 12. Where citizens are forbidden to leave or return to their country, as contemplated in Article 13. Freedom of speech or religion is denied, as prescribed in Article 18 and 19. And the right to join a trade union is denied, as contemplated in Article 23, and as finally in Article 26, where education is denied. Now, the Secretary General in his Millennium Report, We the People, this is what he said, the Secretary General of the United Nations. He said, better governance means, in a globalized world, greater participation, coupled with accountability. Therefore, the international public domain, including the United Nations, must be opened up further to the participation of many actors whose contributions are essential to managing the part of globalization. For the United Nations, success in meeting the challenges of globalization ultimately comes down to meeting the needs of people. It is in their name that the Charter was written. Now that's very important. The Charter was not written for academics. The Charter was not written for judges. The Charter was not written for professorial discussion. The Charter was written for ordinary, simple people like you and I. There you are. It is in their name that the Charter was written, realizing their aspirations remain or the vision for the 21st century. Now that is very, very important to remember. So my dear students, I think I have left with you with enough perhaps food for thought. I would perhaps, let me take a minute or two more and tell you, if you look at ancient history, it is replete with examples of good governance and human rights. And Kautilya says in his Arthashastra, quote, in the happiness of his subject likes the king's happiness in their welfare. In other words, the king was never happy unless his subjects were happy. He shall not consider as good only which pleases him, but treat as beneficial to him whatever pleases his subjects. 2000 years ago, Tiruvalluvar in Tamil Nadu spelt out in verse 1330, the three Purashtras of existence. And what are they? Dharma, Artha, and Kama. In his chapter on Artha, like Kautilya's Arthashastra, he also dealt with the characteristics of a well-run administration, or shall we say, the ethics of good administration. I was reading up the books and I found that Justice Ramana, in his Sri Bahu lecture series, gave a talk entitled reforming our polity on the basis of Dharma. And in his talk, I will finish off by reminding you that in his talk, he has provided valuable insights into the concepts of Dharma. And this is what he says. From the most ancient times, as part of Dharma, one of the ideals placed before individuals was that for a higher or greater interest, lower or personal interest should be subordinate. Idealism is incorporated in a verse in the Hitopadesha. It reads, subordinate the interests of an individual for the sake of the family to subserve the interests of the village in the interests of the state, of all worldly interests in order to attain eternal bliss. He referred to Darshasastra, and he says it talks about the principles of governance and lays down rules of administration. It also discusses in detail the role of king, his duties, rate of taxation, use of espionage, and the laws for governing society. Right? So there you are. And then finally, he refers to King Ashoka, who believed in high ideals, which according to him coldly led people to the virtuous and peace-loving. This is called Dharma. I won't perhaps ponder on the constraints of time, but simply to say that many United Nations documents have this to say about governance. It insists on participation for respect for the rule of law, the need for transparency, the requirement for being responsive, for governance to have the capacity to reach a broad consensus for the lost interest of the society, to ensure equity, inclusiveness, to be effective and efficient, and finally accountable. That is what human rights, my dear friends and my dear students, is all about. May I leave you with those few thoughts to ponder over them, research them, sleep with them, think about them. Because it is only if we adopt human rights as part of our genetic character that we can give life to human rights, that we can make this planet of ours, our country, our communities, our societies, better places to live in. So with those few thoughts, and whilst thanking you again for giving me this opportunity of speaking with you, may I wish you a year ahead, a better 2021, where we would live human rights in its true spirit, in a spirit of live and let live, as President Radhakrishna put it in the great Constitutional Assembly debates in 1951 when he drafted your constitution. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your wise thoughts towards the protection of human rights on international level. Next, we have with us our guest of honor, Professor Dr. Heather Catherine Alex Doctor, and she's an faculty member of the Law and Social Sciences Department at This Frost University and a researcher of constitutional law and human rights law. She has a doctorate from Oxford University in comparative constitutional law and an MA in human rights law from the University of Bologna and University of Sarajevo. She has worked as a journalist and a researcher of human rights in the Balkans, former Soviet Union, Middle East, and Australia, and she has also published a book on freedom of expression in 2013 and her books on polar law and comparative constitutional law, and both forthcoming. So now, please, ma'am, can you please share your knowledge and expertise with us in regards to the human rights?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, firstly, for that very kind introduction. Thank you very much for, I'm sincerely very honored and humbled to be invited to participate, to talk amongst such great legal minds. And I feel I almost don't deserve to be in the same, placed on the same footing as the two other speakers alongside whom I'm talking. So I won't attempt the kind of really astonishing and panoramic view that Justice Pierre just gave. I found that so multifaceted and panoramic as all the threads of human rights from philosophy to the present challenges of today. And I think gave us all such a perfect lens through which to think of how human rights are threaded into all of our lives. So I consider what I say over the next 10 minutes to be a mere footnote to the speech that came before mine, because I thought that was a beautiful overview of what human rights means to all of us and how they're threaded through all our cultures and our ways of understanding values and the inherent dignity of each people. So my talk will be more specific and more narrow, because I consider all I can offer is sort of a footnote to the thinking of the other two speakers alongside whom I've been positioned. I wanted to take a moment of reflection to think back on the 2010s after the very challenging year that we've all had in 2020 and this unprecedented global crisis that has raised so many questions for us about globalization and our interconnectivity and our interdependence. I think if that's one thing that we've hopefully all learned from the crises and the challenges of the last year is the interdependence of this globalized world, and how we can only tackle global challenges and uphold human rights if we acknowledge our interdependence with one another, and like resist forces that stymie that interdependence, such as nationalism or neocolonialism or xenophobic discourse. One thing I've been working on, this book I'm writing about comparative constitutional law and the 2010s, there were two little threads within it that keep re-emerging. One was the importance of human rights education, and that's something I've very impressed the work of many, particularly Indian organizations, but also UN bodies such as UNICEF doing work on human rights education for children, or the Danish Institute of Human Rights, who've done work on teaching each person in the world, the ordinaries, not experts of human rights, not people who have advanced degrees in human rights, but any person in the world to understand what rights they have, has been such an important initiative of the 2010s, of something that I hope won't dissipate through the challenges of the time with COVID, because empowering people to know what rights they have is one of the most important disciplines of human rights practitioners. And the really important work, both UN bodies and other institutions and organizations on this, and academicians setting up the proliferation of master's programs in specifically in human rights law in the 2010s has been a really great trend on that. And the other thing that I keep coming to when I'm doing sort of looking back on the last 10 years is this increasing understanding of the fact that all core human rights must be secured in tandem for any one of them to be meaningful. This is something I find so beautiful about the work, for instance, the great economist and thinker Amartya Sen, who has, of course, been very influential on my whole generation in our understanding of human rights. The idea that this sort of Cold War binary of there being these two international covenants in law, and that you either are concerned about civil and political rights on the one hand, or you're concerned about economic, social, and cultural rights on the other, and that being very charged with politics of how you conceive a society, is a kind of stymieing force. And it's very important that we consider that all human rights require other rights to be secured in order for them to be fully realized, in order for us to kind of achieve our true self-realization. If you only have secure your civil and your freedom of your J.S. Mill rights, your leave me alone rights, your liberal rights of I have my right to freedom of expression, I have my right to vote, this sort of classically negative liberty rights, you are not being fully kind of emancipated and enabled if you don't have access to schools, running water, and infrastructure. And inequalities will exist that exacerbate and hinder your life. And conversely, if you have the more kind of collectivist rights, which I greatly value, I think they're very important rights, enshrined in the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, but you don't have the agency as a citizen to assert yourself in as a civil and political citizen, that your life was, or to practice your freedom of religion, or to practice your freedom of thought, that your life will similarly be hampered. And I feel that this is the kind of important paradigm shift of the last 10 years, this increasing understanding. I think it's very important to kind of continue promoting this understanding that I think Amartya Sen articulates far better than anything I will ever be able to articulate in my life. That all like raising a child or nourishing a plant, we have to nourish all, like raising a child or nourishing a plant, we have to nourish all of our human rights at once for any one of them to be meaningful, and there are no trade-offs on those rights. The last little thing with my book, the development of the 2010s that I thought was important, was increasing recognition of all the actors involved in responsibilities for human rights, and particularly non-state actors. So there's this shift in this understanding that businesses are actors, they have agency and they have responsibilities, and they need to be involved in the dialogue about human rights protection. I think was an important shift in the 2010s that I hope won't fall by the wayside with the disasters and difficulties of 2020. To just shift very briefly, because I know we should move on to other discussions. The last thing that I've been working on, and what brought me to Iceland just before the pandemic hit, and what I think is so important and so vital about the work that the Geeta Institute does, is this connection, the connectivity between human rights on the one hand and the environment on the other, and ensuring that that's a kind of symbiotic, healthy dynamic, which brings together these two bodies of knowledge. And I think it's so wonderful and so important that we've seen this shift toward putting human rights and environmental issues kind of on the table together. I appreciate a lot of the work of both local and international NGOs on that, and also the work of investigative journalists, who I think deserve a lot of respect, documenting the relationship between when the planet is brutalized, it also entails human rights violations. When human rights are violated, it also involves a kind of desecration or abuse of the planet, and how to unpick this dynamic. One thing I've been looking at a lot is provisions for the climate crisis in national constitutions. Iceland provision in its proposed constitution that says future generations have a right to a clean environment. And it's a very simple but very beautiful idea to not only think of yourself, to the concept of being a good ancestor, to think of who, as much as we honor our heritage of who has come before us, we think of who will come after us and their rights to a cleaner environment. So using this human rights language of rights to actually protect the environment, I think is a very useful mechanism. That my little initiative in the world is to see how I can now thread this into all national constitutions in the world, because I think it's such a beautiful and simple idea. It's simple in the best sense to say, we have a right to think, we have a responsibility to think of the rights of those who are not here yet, and their right to the environment. And it's a very helpful way of kind of making concern for the environment kind of concrete. And then lastly, the other work I've been looking at, this I think is a very complex conversation, but one that I feel is important to have, and why like the Geeta Institute and these other institutes bringing together these bodies of knowledge between environmental law on the one hand and human rights on the other are so important, is the conversation that I think we all need to have globally about the role of the law in reckoning with the climate crisis and this debate. Do we litigate? Do we prosecute? How do what international court mechanisms do we have for that? And within that, the concept of ecocide, which I think is very important. The work of Philippe Sons at the Lauterbach Center in Cambridge and other great academicians and practitioners worldwide, trying to work on how best to conceptualize in human rights law or in international law the tragedy and the damage of the climate crisis. I started studying human rights as my personal background because I wanted to understand how the Holocaust happened and to say that this must never happen again. And my most recent work has been with a rabbi here, and it was so interesting, Professor Pierides, that you brought together these links between religion and human rights and how they thread through all cultures. Because in a way, human rights in 1948 were developed as a kind of great assertion of never again. And that's often been kind of what I carry with me in my work on human rights and on mass atrocities and on genocide and on crimes against humanity. And I feel that we now face this another of a different nature, global crisis of the climate emergency, how we conceptualize that in law. As Lauterpacht and Lemkin came up with his concepts of crimes against humanity and genocide, we need to come up with the conceptual tools in public international law to conceptualize the climate crisis, whether it's the concept of ecocide or whether we call the climate crisis a crime against humanity. I think these are important kind of conceptual shifts that we need to be having. But I think I have to defer to the knowledge of people far more are wise and far more advanced than I am. So I think that the main core point that I would like to leave with is a much a sense idea that you must secure the entire range of human rights in order for any one of them to be meaningful. And it's only through that human flourishing can be fully kind of enabled. And that's if anything you take from this, that's the idea that I would like to kind of my small little contribution to this conversation. So thank you very much. And I'll pass you back to the next speaker now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your encouraging words.
Thank you.
Now, we have with us our chief guest, Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India. Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra has served as the 45th Chief Justice of India from 2017 to 2018. He has also been appointed as the Chief Justice of Patna High Court in 2009 and the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court in 2010. As a judge, Justice Mishra has delivered several judgments in the field of human rights, civil liberties, and rights concerning the lives of the citizens. He has also decided important issues pertaining to commercial and contractual matters, corporate laws, and issues in the field of taxation and arbitration. As a judge of the Supreme Court of India, he has delivered several landmark judgments. He has contributed immensely to the Indian constitutional jurisprudence, and each of his judgments can be said to constitute watershed moments in the Indian judicial history for enhancing the scope of the golden trinity of rights under the Constitution. Justice Mishra has been a strong upholder of constitutional values and citizenry rights and a staunch defender of the rights of equality, liberty, and dignity. So please share your wisdom with us, as your expertise is a powerful gift that deserves to be shared. So please, can we have
Dr. Pierides, former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka's permanent representative in UN, Dr. Heather Katharina Allensdottir from Iceland, a great speaker on environment, Mr. S.P. Bansal, Chairman, Geeta Group of Institution, Dr. Subhash Mittal, Principal, Geeta Institute of Law, Ms. Manabi Kundu, Assistant Professor, Geeta Institute of Law. Dear students, ladies and gentlemen, I have a different kind of perspective of human rights. Human rights as a concept is not theoretical abstraction. Whether you define it denotatively or describe it with the connotative expansion, it has to be rooted in practicality. It lives in dignity, liberty, and having one's right of choice, which the constitution of a country permits. As we are having an international seminar, I am not going to speak about any particular constitution. Second, as has been told by my esteemed brother Paris, in Vedas and the ancient texts, they talked about human rights in a different way. In one of the shlokas, it is stated, Loka samasta sukhino bhavanto, that all the people remain in peace, exist in peace. Peace is the key word, and you cannot remain in peace unless there is environmental harmony, natural harmony, and governmental administration, which we in ordinary terms call good governance. A citizen recognizes peace and harmonious existence when there is law and order situation, maintenance of it in a sustained manner, because he wants a government to govern, but not to govern so much. And that is why we have the saying, the best government is that which governs the least. I'll give an example. There is a tree, a very big tree outside your house. It gives shelter to you during the rainy season. It protects you in summer. But will any of you plant such a tree in your courtyard? You don't want it because you don't want the house to be destroyed. Similarly, individualism of an individual, which the citizen cherishes, doesn't want to be interfered with. Without the constitutional paradigms and parameters and heightened principles of rule of law. And that is the core fundamental part of human rights. I presently focus on Atharva Veda. In Atharva Veda, it has been stated, and I quote translating it in English, all have equal rights in articles of food and water. The yoke of chariot is placed equally on the shoulders of all. All should live together with harmony, supporting one another like the spokes of a wheel of the chariot, connecting its rim and knob, unquote. Look at the grand saying. It doesn't relate to anyone. It relates to all. The majority, the minority, no religion, only human, who is the basic essence of humanity. The idea is bereft of any kind of complex phenomenon. It is absolutely simple, and that is why it is human. I think the professor had talked something with regard to gender justice. We are talking about the challenges faced in the contemporary global situation. Gender justice, that the concept of equal gender justice has not been totally solved. Definitely, thousands of books have been written, but in practical field, in all countries, there is some kind of discrepancy, dichotomy. You must have heard of Robert Louis Stevenson. He first talked about gender equality. Then there was the movement in England with regard to the franchise. Lady Susan and others came for it. Ibsen, a playwright from, let's call him an English playwright, but he is from the Ireland. He's in a play, A Doll's House, talked about, asserted through the character about the right of a woman, the equal right. Osborne, in his play, Look Back in Anger, had a soft text. The man used to tell the lady, you have the relaxation of spirit, but actually wanted to dominate. There was male chauvinism. And that is why there is a subtext that in the guise of relaxation of spirit, you cannot dominate. It's easy to say, easy to talk about gender equality, but very difficult to practice. And that is why in the contemporary world, it is the requisite, it is peremptory, it is imperative and categorical that all of us must not only believe in it, but treat it as an acceptable ideology to be practiced. It is because if you ignore a woman, an equal partner in a man's life, or you are really ignoring 50% of the human race. You cannot ignore human race and talk about human rights. I will develop another concept. Human rights, if you believe, you have faith in it. The people who do not believe in humanity and the people who do not believe in human rights, they develop a philosophy. And you know what is that philosophy? That you must have the ability to commit philosophical suicide. Philosophical suicide does not mean committing suicide, but training yourself not to pose a question with regard to violation of the violation of human rights and the value of human rights. All of us are born in a beautiful world due to the pleasure of creative intelligence. That is why in India we say, Anandat Sanjataha. We have been procreated by the creative intelligence because of delight. Whereas there are some writers who condemn humanity or human life. Maybe they are great thinkers. As an intellectual, one may share with some idea with them. But they say man is condemned to be free. That cannot be correct. That is a philosophical suicide which a human right protagonist cannot acknowledge. You have to really live and think of this affirmative right of human rights, that it is a great delight to be born as a human being. But there is a very significant but which I would like to assert. Just to become a human is not sustenance of human right. It is a natural right. It is fundamental to your bones and marrows. It is universal. It is inalienable, insegregable, inseparable from your entity. And your entity is your identity. If the identity is not respected, you are bound to lose the dignity of human rights. Justice Paris emphatically stated, and I entirely agree with him, with regard to the dignity of the human being. Dignity is yourself. You are the dignity personified. It doesn't matter in which position and which strata of your life you are placed. You have the inborn dignity. That is why Bhartrihari says, if I am on the correct path, I must follow the path. I quote Bhartrihari. Bhartrihari is a great great Sanskrit poet. He says, Nindantu niti nipunaha yadi vastuvantu lakshmi sama bisatu gacchatu ba dathestam adyeva maranamastu jugantareva nayat patha pravicharanti padagna dhira. I'll translate it. Let the entire wise men blame me or praise me. Let the money come or money doesn't come. Let the death come today or after years. Doesn't matter. A man who believes in himself, who has the conviction that he is correct, he will not deviate from the path. That correct path, according to me, is the reverence for the humanity, is the respect for the dignity of another individual. And that is your core fundamental human duty. I will just give one example of modern discovery. All of us know, and we are debating, artificial intelligence. The core question is, would artificial intelligence substitute human intelligence? I am of the indubitable view, artificial intelligence can never substitute human intelligence. It is a tool and has to be utilized as a tool. Unless we do that, we will be attacking human rights, human dignity. How? If artificial intelligence ushers in and the man loses the right to food, right to livelihood, right to shelter because of absence of employment, the basic values of existence are lost. Therefore, any kind of technical discovery, any kind of techno advancement must yield to human dignity and human right. During these 2 years, in many countries, there is less talk about liberty. There are many speakers of liberty. There are many ideas also. But basic thing is liberty is not a hollow bubble. Liberty is not sound and fury signifying nothing. Liberty is not a mushroom that will perish when the morning comes. It is eternal value. It is the spine of the human existence. If we lose liberty, what is the point of existence? And that is why the devotees of liberty lay emphasis, less stress on such maintenance of human rights, stability of human rights. We have a concept in our country, and I will compare with history. During the Second World War, Mussolini and his wife were tied, and the group of people, the soldiers, whatever the army was, they wanted to shoot. Mrs. Mussolini told, "Don't kill him, kill me first." And she was killed. Then Mussolini was shot. Okay, we are not questioning that. Thereafter, the people who were there, they dragged the dead bodies and they did so many things which I cannot speak. History has recorded it. Absolutely inhuman. Hitler came to know about it, and that is why he got inside the bunker, married to Eva Braun, and addressed and directed his captains. You now put fire so that my body will get into ashes, burn into ashes. Nobody can treat me with indignity. My purpose of saying is human right also exists because if you take and treat dignity as a part of human rights. So Justice Mohan, let's trace. Dignity matters. A dead person has dignity. If you do not care for the dignity of the dead, I would go to the extent of saying that you are violating the human rights. Now, another aspect I would like to highlight. In the modern days, we are really not concerned about the effect and the impact on the reputation of another person. If you want to protect your reputation, if you are desirous of protecting your dignity, you must treat the other person with respect and dignity. That mutuality matters. It is not only a human right, it is also basic existential right. None of us can forget it. And in the contemporary world, we are finding this is missing. And all of us must try to get it restored and instill it among the students, because they are the future. They are the next generation. Now I've talked about the next generation. Now I must say something, because my previous speaker, Prof. Katharina ji, has spoken something on that. I always believe human culture, humanity as a concept, human right as a conception cannot grow unless we really try to maintain and sustain the environment. As such, we are in peril, we are in trouble. But whatever we have said so far, as a world, as a part of the globe, we must try to heighten it. That is why we said this planetization must teach us how to look after the environment. That is the job of the experts. But as individuals, we should not try to destroy it. At least we can do that much. We can teach our students, our next generation, not to be destructive. Similarly, the present generation should not take advantage of the environment and live a life of luxury at the cost of the future generation. That's mutual generational protection must be taught and learned. One aspect, and this is my last aspect, in the contemporary world, there is a globalization in economics, in business. While people are growing in business, they must have the duty and they must try to instill and usher in the concept of humanism into business. I attended a seminar 3 years back, Business and Human Rights. I must say, it's a very interesting course. I gave the introductory lecture that human rights must have an entry, so that it must have entry into business. But it has very many subtler and nuanced facets. Now, towards the end, I must say, it's a great pleasure, delight to be in company with Justice Paris after a long time and speaking together and coming to know about Professor Katharina. And I must congratulate Geeta Institute for organizing such a webinar, quite making the people aware about things and making people like us thoughtful, how to have a dialogue with the students and share the view with the academicians, which I always believe it is the academicians who really bring the future generation in the field of law, morality, as well as concrete ideas of humanity. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for providing us an insight in regards to various aspects dealing with the protection of human rights in the era of globalization. Now, I request our principal, sir, Dr. Subhash Mittal, for a word of thanks.
Thank you, Manvi ma'am. Honorable today's chief guest of this seminar, Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India, and respected guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Mohan Maitre Paris, former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, and Professor Dr. Hither Catherine, Department of Law and Social Sciences by Frost University, Iceland. Respected Sri S.P. Bansal, Chairman, Geeta Group of Institutions, and respected Mr. Nishant Bansal and Mr. Ankush Bansal, Vice Chairman, Geeta Group of Institutions. Respected Madam Sumedha Kataria, CEO, Geeta Group of Institutes, and all the dignitaries present in this seminar, all faculty members and dear participants. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of Geeta Institute of Law, Management, staff, and my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Heather Catherine for gracing this occasion. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Honorable Dr. Mohan Maitre Paris, former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, for gracing this occasion by sharing their valuable and inspiring words to us. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India. We also are also privileged to share with you all that he has also blessed us with giving his consent to start moot court competitions under his name, and last year we have started a series on moot court competitions under his name, Justice Deepak Mishra Moot Court Competitions. Sir, your words always motivate us to do innovative things in the academic fields and excel the life of students. I'm also thankful to our worthy chairman, Sir Sri S.P. Bansal, who always motivates us to do the events which are beneficial for the teaching fraternity, research scholars, and students. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to worthy Vice Chairman, Mr. Nishant Bansal and Mr. Ankush Bansal, for their continuing guidance and encouragement to do more and more efforts for the benefit of the students. I am also very thankful to worthy Madam Sumedha Kataria, CEO, to join this e-seminar. I am also very thankful to Dr. Shruti Goyal, Dr. Surpreet Goyal, Dr. Rajiv, Dr. Sunil, Dr. Richa Pandit, Dr. Chola Raja, Dr. Mini Srivastava, who are the resource persons for today's e-seminar, for sparing their valuable time from their busy schedule. I am likely to express my sincere thanks to Mr. Sandeep Saini HOD, Ms. Silpati Sardana HOD, Mr. Anil Vats, and Ms. Neelam Ruhal, convener and co-convener of this e-seminar, Ms. Chinki Ma'am, Dr. Vikas Nadal, Ms. Venus Ma'am, Mr. Sahil, Ms. Kusum, Ms. Manvi Kundu, Ms. Visakha, Mr. Divyanshu Sir. I may like to express my sincere thanks to all the participants for making this event successful, and also express my sincere thanks to all the technical team to coordinate this e-seminar and conducted in a very smooth manner. So all the dignitaries, faculty members, and dear participants, once again, I want to state that we are most grateful to all the speakers on this stage. We thank you for being with us today. It has been a great pleasure for us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank our chairman, sir, Mr. S.P. Bansalji, our vice chairman, Mr. Nishant Bansal, our principal, sir, Dr. Subhash Mittal, for their vision and providing all of us a platform for organizing this international e-seminar, which would help the scholars and academicians to have a healthy discussion on such current issues and present their creative ideas on the same. So before we end this inaugural session, I would like to announce that we would start the technical session after 10 minutes as already been instructed to all the presenters and the resource persons. And I would like all the moderators to contact their resource persons and the presenter. So once again, thank you all for your valuable time.
Okay. Okay, Professor.